So we'll look at a toe chart, what that is all about, setting up the standards for layout and controls on application, tab order, a splash screen, setting a default font and color, a default button, printing the form, and playing an audio file. So before you begin an application in Visual Studio, you need to plan it. You can draw it on a piece of paper. In development, they call it the toe chart. Task, object, and event. It shows the application task, what objects they are, and what events. Task, object, events should be identified, the first 3 steps of planning. So you identify the task needed to perform, number 1. Number 2, the objects you're going to use for that application. And then the events that's going to be triggering that object. And then finally, designing the user interface. So we have an example of a Sunshine Cellular company, takes orders by phone for cell phones priced at $100 each, 2 colors available, blue and silver. Currently the salespeople calculate the order total. You develop an order taking application for this company. You need to identify what tasks they are. So here's a screen of a layout possibly for the application. Customer name, address, city, state, zip. Phone ordered, how many blue, how many red, total number, and total price. So first you review the current structure of the procedures and forms. You ask questions like what needs to be displayed on the screen, what needs to be printed, all the way to will previous information need to be cleared from the screen before new information is entered. So here's a task for this application. You get the following information from the user: customer name, street address, city, state, zip, number of silver phones, blue phones. Calculate the total order and total price, then display that information, and then the application, and clear the screen for the next order. So the objects would be buttons, text boxes, labels, things of that nature that you're going to be putting on your form. So you take the task, and to the right of the task in the object column you assign an object and you name it. The first week I went over a naming convention, a little bit different than the textbook. For text boxes, I like to use TXT, labels, LBL, buttons, BTN, and instead of being at the end of the name, at the beginning of the name. But here's some examples of name, address, city, state, zip, silver and blue, calc, and then displaying that information on the same objects, exit button and a clear button. The events are what happens when you click on a button or type in something in a text box. Generally, text boxes have no special events needed. In this application, you can have events happen to a text box, but for this one there is none. Labels, no special events. Buttons, an action occurs when each button is clicked. So in this case, for the calc button, there is a click event. Displaying the information, calc button goes to the totals phone label and total price label, exit button and clear button. So, task here, calculating the total phones ordered and price. You've got calc button as click event, display the total phones ordered and total price, and display it in total phones label and total price label. Clear the screen with the clear button and the application with the exit button. Display the total phones ordered from the calc button into the total phones label. Total price displayed into the total price label from calc button when it's clicked. And then display the order information, name, text box, address, city, state, zip, silver, and blue. Next, you design the user interface with the following toe chart that you've just designed. And you want to have consistency, how things look and feel, make sure it's easy to follow from the user standpoint. The guidelines are generally, it should flow either vertical or horizontal in the flow of the forms. Most important information should usually be the upper left corner of the screen. Group related information together. And you have such items in the toolbox like group box, panel control, and table layout panel control to help. So here's an example of the Sunshine Cellular phone order. Have an image box, label, label text button, label text button, label text button, label text, label text, label, 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 and label. This is a vertical arrangement of the application of what it could be. Here's a horizontal arrangement of what it could be in the application interface. Label guidelines, you use a label just to identify the text box for the user, usually to the left of the text box. You left align the label in the property for alignment. Position the label to the left of or above the text box it identifies. Generally, labels and button captions should be 1 to 3 words only and appear on one line. They should be meaningful in their captioning. And identify labels should end in a semicolon or a colon. Use sentence capitalization for identifying labels. Basically just caps the first letter in every word. Book capitalization, capitalizing the first letter in each word except articles, conjunctions, and prepositions. Button guidelines, size of buttons relative to each other. If they're horizontally, make sure they're the same width. Most common used buttons should be first on the form. Positioning of all the controls, make sure they have a margin all around the edges. Make sure that they're not too close together to distract. The human eye is generally attracted to pictures first, so it's good to put those in the upper left corner for aesthetic purposes. Make sure they're small, not too large, and add a personal touch to the form. And you can do that this week as well with the homework application. Fonts, make sure that they are good, eye-pleasing fonts. Make sure you limit your bold use, italicizing and underlined, avoid that. One font type for all of the interface. There's a SOG UI font for Windows 7 or Vista, which looks the best. And then change the form's font property before adding any controls. Controls will default to the font that is set to the form. Human eye is drawn to color before black and white, so make sure and use color sparingly. Border style on objects are such as none, fixed single, and fixed 3D. Labels should, the display output should always be at fixed single. An auto size property determines if a label control could be automatically sized. There's access keys also that you can put on objects using the Alt plus whatever key. Use an ampersand before that one for the access key. Access key guidelines. Assign access keys to each control that can accept user input. Exceptions would be OK and cancel buttons. Each access code key should be unique. And follow the Windows standards of choice of access keys. Advantages of access keys: it helps the user that does not have a mouse to navigate, faster typing. You include the ampersand in front of the character to be used in the access key. So if you put an ampersand in front of the calculate word here, put an underline under calc, and Alt-C will allow them to use that and go right to that area on the application. We'll scroll ahead a little bit further and let you read this on your own on Tabindex. Splash screens, generally used when the application first starts to introduce the application. Holds the user attention for just a few moments while it's being loaded into memory. Here's the example of one. and then goes right into the application after a splash screen sits up there for a little bit. So let's go right into the application for this week. It's the music sampler application, and I'll let you read the rest of the notes on your own. Music sampler application is an application that allows the user to run the application and listen to some music after a splash screen shows.
Gotta get that.
So you click the button and can preview the music. For this one, you're going to have a text box or label, multiple labels. These are all labels on the form. Buttons. What's holding these is a table layout panel and 3 buttons at the bottom, a color, print, and exit. When they click these buttons, it previews the corresponding artist to the left. This colors a background form, prints the form, gives a print preview form anyway, and then this exits the form. You'll also need on the application a color dialog from your toolbox. Color dialog, drag it in, and then also print form. Okay. Color dialog is going to be found in the toolbox here. As you drag down, you'll see it available to you under dialogues. Print form is also going to be found towards the bottom, and this is a print dialog form called print form. That also needs to be dragged over from the toolbox. Print form is found under the Visual Basic Power Packs called print form. The music that's going to be previewed would need to be in the bin folder in the debug. As you can see on mine, in the Solution Explorer, if you click on the Show All Files, you're able to see all the files in your project, one being bin. You expand that, go to debug, you'll notice all of the .wav files, which are the video files for the application. So let's get right into the code. You also have the splash screen as well, which is a default splash screen in Visual Basic. And then one last thing on the splash screen to make sure that it runs first is you right click on your solution name, go to properties after your splash screen's been added, and you're going to put in the startup form as the main form. And then down here at the bottom, it'll also have an example selection for your splash screen right here. Splash screen form, and then click here the view application events, and right now there is none in there, but in here is where application developers put such things as saving to log files, error catches, things of that nature. Okay, so let's go back to the main form. There's the information, name, date, music sampler, class information. Let's go button by button. First is the breakaway, Kelly Clarkson. You double click on that, brings you right to the code. And it's my.computer.audio.play. In parentheses and quotes is the name of the file. Now this is going to be playing from the folder where the executable is, and so all the WAV files need to be in the same folder where the executable file is as it is in here in the developing. It's in the debug folder. All the WAV files are in there. Okay, so you'll see they're there for the boom, breakaway, feeling, Sydney, and thriller, and tracing. All have the WAV files. When they run and clicked on, it'll actually run those WAV files. The other is a color button. The color button will take the default color of the back color, whatever it is by default when the application runs, puts it in the color dialog, goes to show dialog, and then whatever the user selects, that color dialog goes back to the back color. So an example, I'll run this one. We already previewed the sound. Color, we'll make it a green. Click OK, you'll notice it's green. We'll do color again, make it yellow. Now it's yellow. Lastly is the print button. The print button uses a print preview into the print action for the print form and then prints it into a screen, just like so. This can be printed into any printer, default printer connected to the application. So that concludes the week 3 music sampler. Again, text box here. This is a table layout designer panel. Label, 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 label. All these are labels here. Buttons here. Buttons down here. And then finally the exit button, which is just a me.close. To get the color for the buttons here, selected. And over here in the property, you'll go to the background image. And in the background image where you import the image that you want, and in this case it's going to be from the test application, or not the test application, the music application sampler. So let's go there real quick. And my music application sampler is in chapter 2. It's going to be located in my bin folder, and you can do a thumbnail view to make sure it's the right one. You click on that, it brings it in, click OK, and now it fits it into that button as a picture on that button. Right? That concludes the week 2 or week 3 of chapter 2 with the code information. And just to make sure on your naming conventions that you follow as I have in week 1 and 2 for your buttons, labels, text boxes. The new one for this week is going to be for print form and color dialog. You can leave them the default name as they come in. You don't need to change those. And then the new one will be the table layout. You can keep that the default name as well, which is going to be table layout panel 1. That's fine. And the text property for the form is music sampler. One of the things last week that happened on some students was they had error on the load of the application because there was an apostrophe in the name of the project. And if you right click on your Solution Explorer project, go to properties, there was an apostrophe here. Make sure there's no apostrophe in your assembly name. If you ever do have one by accident, you can come here, get rid of the apostrophe, save it, recompile it, and then you're good to go. Okay? Well, that completes week 3, chapter 2. If you do have any questions, give me an email on Eagle. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. You can also chat with me on Meebo and the course conference if I'm online.